Welcome to the Dreams of Consciousness podcast. If you'd be so kind, would you mind introducing yourself?
How are you? My name is Rick Habeeb. I'm in the band Gray Skies Fallen. I've been on before. How you doing there, Adrian?
Not only have you been on before, I think you are the most regular guest on the blog and the podcast.
Nice. I mean, we go back. We go back, man. We go back.
We go back to 2013, I think.
Yeah.
I think the first
Sounds
time
right.
we spoke, the first time you were on the blog was 2013. The first time we spoke on the podcast was not long after that. It was episode 9, so still in single digits.
Oh.
And, besides Gray Skies Fallen, we've talked about your other projects like Buckshot Facelift, Brave the Waters. I guess it was about a year and a half ago that we got together again to speak about Rooking Aura.
Yeah. It was. Time is flying. A year and a half went by like that. And here we are doing this with Gray Skies. But yeah, 2013 was right around the time we kind of I don't say reactivated. We were always active, but when we kind of got our shit together with Tom on bass, and we got our guitar player Joe Sanchi at the time. He played on 2 records with us, or 1 record and a 7-inch. But that's right around the time we started getting our stuff back together again, getting a full lineup. So that checks out.
And I think there was a big lineup change around that time, right?
At that point, the previous EP we had done is 2012's Introspective, and that was done with just myself doing all the guitars, Craig on keyboards, and Sal, the drummer, who's been in the band forever. It was just us 3. And so after that, we really wanted to get a second guitarist again, and we needed a bass player. So at the time, I was just starting to jam with Buckshot Facelift, and Sal is also in that band. So it was pretty easy to get Tom to come in Gray Skies because we really hit it off musically pretty early. So at that point, we also got Joe Sanchi, who was he also played in the band for a little while in the early 2000s. He didn't record with us at the time, but he was in a band called Mantis Mass after us, after Gray Skies. He did Mantis Mass, which is a sick band. Anyway, yeah, so we had started getting our act together around 2013 with the new lineup. And since that time, there's been more lineup changes. There have been a few. So it's always fluid in this band, it seems,
So the first time you were on the blog, I asked you to describe Gray Skies, and you described Gray Skies in 5 words. And what you said was doom, black death, but not. Is that still true?
It kind of. I mean, I was asked a similar question today and the other day, and I used doom, and they asked me to use a few words, and yeah, doom, black death, but not. Yeah, I mean, there's all those elements in the new album. I don't think we're a death metal band or a black metal band. People might not even say we're a doom metal band, but I always, when people ask what we are, I say we're a doom metal band. But I mean, there's so many versions of doom. There's so many, who knows, whatever. We're a metal band, but yeah, I kind of trailed off there.
I think we spoke about the Peaceville bands being a big influence on Gray Skies, at least in the early days.
Yeah, at the beginning, My Dying Bride, definitely. The Angel in the Dark River is probably still my favorite metal album, most influential to me, because I had known those guys, material from Turn Loose the Swans, and I knew the first album I had from tape trading, but Turn Loose the Swans mostly. And, once I heard Angel in the Dark River, it was kind of like a switch went on in my head. And Joe and I had been jamming for a few years before that, but we kind of got serious right around 95, late 95, right when that album was hitting the scene. Big influence, definitely. Anathema too. I really like the emotion in their music. The huge, they have a huge sound to them, airiness kind of melodies, and I like that kind of stuff. And Paradise Lost, they run the gamut. I didn't like their Depeche Mode phase, but everything else everything else from them. But yeah, those bands were big in the beginning, definitely.
I mean, in the New York area, were there a lot of other doom metal bands? Because I can't really think of many besides Typo.
Well, Evoking, who's the big funeral doom band. I mean, they've been around since the early '90s. I guess they go by Jersey, but John, he and I grew up together in Staten Island, so he's the Staten Island guy, New York, and Chris, who was in that band, also was from Staten Island. So Evoking I look at them as a New York band, but they might say they're a Jersey band. And at the time, Chris, who I just spoke of in Evoking, he was in a band called Divine Silence. And they were a local band, but when My Dying Bride played in New York in '97, Divine Silence got to open that show. So that was huge for them. So they were on the scene for a few years. They actually put a record out in the early 2000s also. But, Typo was, yeah, like I always consider Typo like, Doom. Their shit was so slow. And like I saw them play a 15-minute, whatever it was, slow plotting Doom song. And at the end, he goes, "That was Sunshine of Your Love from Cream." And I was like, what the fuck? It didn't sound anything. It was just so heavy and so awesome, And I think I've seen Typo more live than I've seen any band ever. I think I saw them about 12 to 15 times, which was a lot. Because, I would go see them every time they would hit local, they would play Lemoore all the time and they'd start playing bigger venues and, love Peace Steel. Also saw Carnivore a few times too. That was great.
So in the early years, who are you mostly playing with?
Well, we didn't like our shows have always kind of been sporadic. We never like toured. We've never toured once. Like we've done a few weekend runs later, like in the mid 2010s. We did some weekends. We did with a couple of bands, but we never really had like bands that we ran with or played with a lot. It was just sporadic shows here and there. And then we would get lucky and play on Milwaukee Metal Fest and that scene. We would be able to play on those fests, and that would be our shows. Like, I mean, we weren't really, like I said, a touring band, so we would get to play these shows, and they were the shows for us. They were huge for us, and that's where we would concentrate on it during those days. And with a lot of member changes and stuff as you get older, you things get more realistic as far as who can do what. And at this time, we're a little bit more flexible than we were in the past. So depending on how things go with the record, we're able to do a few things, moving and shaking.
So I guess that's a good segue to speak about the record. At the time that we're having this conversation, it's about a month away, but your sixth album is called Molded by Broken Hands, and it'll be out through Profound Lore Records on March 8th. The last time we spoke, you mentioned that you were working on the album. I don't know how much you had finished at that point. What was the status of the album when we spoke a year and a half ago, and when did you actually finish working on this?
If we were talking during the promotion of the Reeking Aura album, which I believe came out in like July. I could be wrong. I usually remember these things, but I think that came out in July. So it was about a year and a half. Yeah. So we were in the middle of recording this album at that time. We started in, I believe, June of the years are just a blur at this point, 2022. And it's a long process because after we had finished the music, I took a couple of months to get the vocals prepared, and we were doing some Reeking Aura touring, things like that was taking my time. So I was on the road writing lyrics in the hotels with my iPad, the headphones on, and trying to get the Gray Sky stuff done while I was on the road with Reeking Aura. And that was cool. I got it done, but it took a few more months. And then when we finished recording, we got it to Mr. Swano, and he's a busy guy, and that takes a little while. And then when it's all done, then the label does their thing and the promotion does their thing, and it's strings. It's drawn out a long period. So the album We started it in mid 2022, and now it's coming out in March 2024. So it's a good it's a good process that I'd like to streamline in the future. And I think with our next album, which we've already started writing, we're going to do a better job of demoing, pre-production. I think things of that nature, where when we get in the studio, it's bang it out, and I'm more prepared myself with vocals, because that usually is the hang up for me. The lyrics, the vocals, I usually wait till last to do that. And I think if we do them now song by song basis, where I get the vocals done each song instead of 8 songs at the end, it'll be better in the long run, and it'll be better for us as far as cranking out material.
So I'm not sure how much we spoke about this when you were on back in 2014 or whatever it was. But do you guys write as a band, or are you working on the music mostly on your own?
In Gray Skies, we generally write in the rehearsal room. Myself or Joe. I mentioned Joe Sanchi earlier, but Joe D'Angelo is our guitar player these days. He's our original guitarist. He's back in the band now. He's been out of the band for a few years. He's back in the band, and this is his first recording with us in 13 or 14 years. Joe played on all the original albums and stuff. So now that he's back, and this last record, the new record was written more in a band environment in the rehearsal room. Joe would bring riffs. Actually, a couple songs he had demos of, and one year was actually a full song that we kind of morphed. So Joe definitely brings a lot to the table with material. But moving forward, we're looking to get back into a rehearsal room situation where we're there as much as possible, as much as we can, and start writing the old school way, which is just jamming. It's cool. Bring your riffs that you write at home and stuff like that, and put songs together at home. And I'm totally down with modern construction of songwriting and how bands do things. We do that in Reeking Aura. So, I'm totally down for that in Gray Skies too, but I definitely like jamming in the room, 4 of us just chilling and coming up with ideas, throwing ideas around in real time.
For a while, you guys were writing over email, right? Like sharing files back and forth?
I lose. I don't remember situations because we could have. I mean, there's definitely times we could have done that in the past. But like, I'm thinking during the Joe Sanchi era, which was like 2013 to 2016, we were jamming a lot, writing together. And then the Cold Dead Lands album, it was me, Tom, and Sal. That was a 3-piece, our last album, and that also was written just us 3 in a room, So maybe over the last 10 years, we've done a better job of doing things together. But yeah, there's definitely times where riffs come in over email and we put them together, and then we just show up and jam them, and they evolve from there.